It is Friday, February 28th, and this is the tip-off show powered by Wager Talk. We thank you for joining us. We've got Ralph Michaels here today. You can follow him on Twitter at CalSportsLV. I am Jared Smith. Please follow me on Twitter at Jared Lee Smith. Before we get started with today's college basketball action, recapping everything, don't forget subscribe to our YouTube channel at Wager Talk TV. Also, check out our homepage, wagertalk.com and sportsmemo.com. All right, we've got a big night for us, Ralph. Before we get started, the games we're going to be talking about, the big matchups that we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to get to those later in the show, but I wanted to let the viewers know some of these top matchups on the board tonight. We're going to be talking about Davidson at Dayton, big matchup in the Atlantic 10, and also Wright State at Northern Kentucky, the two best teams in the Horizon League doing battle. So if you want Ralph's thoughts on those games, be sure to tune in for this entire show, because we're going to be talking about those at the end. But before we get to that, let's talk about the biggest upsets from last night, Ralph. It was an interesting Thursday on the college basketball card. The biggest upset on the board that we had last night was Cal, a home dog, 8.5-point home dog against ranked Colorado, and it was Cal getting a big win, 76-62. Interesting upset there in the Pac-12.
Well, I think the overall theme for yesterday, Jared, and last night was, hey, California, welcome back to the Pac-12. UCLA showing what they could do on top of the Pac-12. USC taking care of Arizona. Cal, with Mark Fox in his first year, turning the Cal Bears into a competitive team. So I think it's great for the Pac-12 to have those teams winning. Towson knocking off Hofstra.
Yeah.
Not as much of an upset as some might think. Cleveland State playing well with a new coach their first year. And Wisconsin live and die by the three. They lived by it last night, pulling that upset against Michigan.
Yeah, that was the big one for me that kind of stood out, Ralph. Everyone's been kind of talking up Michigan, including myself, over the last week or so, as they've been playing a lot better. The Big Ten, I think, is a fascinating league because of how deep they are and what they did in the non-conference season. But Wisconsin, quietly, Greg Gard doing a great job. Demetric Trice has been incredible in the backcourt. We usually liken Wisconsin to one of those defensive teams, but they've been much more balanced with their offense this year, and they're going to get into that top four in the Big Ten, and that Big Ten tournament is totally wide open. One of those teams I can make a case for a lot of those teams to cut down the nets.
Yeah, again, Wisconsin has an elite defense. When you can go on the road at Michigan and make 11 of 23 three-pointers, we've talked about Wisconsin in the past. They started a little slow. Micah Porter, the Ohio State transfer, was eligible mid-season. He's been a difference maker. Last night he played 25 minutes, scored 18 points in those 25 minutes. He's a great sixth man for him. So, yeah, Wisconsin, if six teams win the Big Ten, no one would blink an eye, and you can't say that about any other conference in basketball.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the biggest covers last night. I'm seeing Oral Roberts with almost a 30-point cover against Western Illinois, 29.5 against the spread. We saw Northern Colorado with a huge win over Idaho, and also Sacramento State beat Montana State. So there were some big favorites last night that won big.
Yeah, we're seeing that a lot more. If you look on the back to the biggest upsets, there was only 10 upsets yesterday. We've had a lot more on some of those strong Thursday cards. And again, when you're looking at the overs and unders, remember the asterisk means there wasn't overtime. That game would have gone over anyway, obviously, to go by 46 points. Wisconsin Green Bay, one of the fastest paced teams, they reached triple digits. And UAB Marshall's a fast team, UAB's not. I actually had Marshall in that game and I lost, but it's one of those games where you get so far behind early, you start pressing that pace, and that's what happens when you get those overs. USC's defense on the under. Eastern Washington, second best team probably in the Big Sky, right behind Montana, shows they can play defense. And then Montana and Northern Arizona, a game where, down to the wire.
Yeah, interesting stuff there. There were some big performances last night. We saw Tavion Hollingsworth of Western Kentucky go off for 43 points in 44 minutes against Louisiana Tech. I see Xavier Simpson's on this list as well. Wisconsin, they didn't get the win. Michigan did over Wisconsin, but Simpson still went off for 32 points as he continues to pace the Wolverines. Any other performances stand out for you last night, individual-wise?
Yeah, well, Javion Jackson from Texas San Antonio is a guy that always scores. I mean, they had the leading guard combo as far as scoring. But Joe knows, and you're going to learn, I love steals. So when I see 4 steals for a guy on top of 38 points, boom, you are there. And, Christian Jones, Stetson, one of those non-board teams that we don't talk to a lot. But, 25, 6, 3, and 4, is a line that you have to get excited about.
Let's move to what we're seeing in the marketplace today. Not a huge night on the college basketball card. Usually Friday nights are lighter, but that will change over the next 2 weeks as we start getting into meaningful conference tournament and NCAA tournament games on Friday night. But tonight, it's kind of a light card. The 2 ones that stood out to me were actually both in the Ivy League, which is kind of surprising. Let's start with Harvard at Columbia. We saw this line open at 7. I'm seeing 9. I'm even seeing 9.5 at some shops. So Harvard, a big mover right now at Columbia. I think it's certainly warranted. Tommy Amaker's team certainly light years ahead of where the Lions are at this point. But, what are you seeing in the Ivy League tonight? Penn also 9.5 at Yale. That's moved to 8. So we're seeing some buyback on the Quakers as well. Interesting movements in the Ivy tonight.
Well, Harvard's such an interesting team because, I have them right behind Yale as far as the power ratings go. But, they're still without Bryce Aiken. He might come back. He started the first 6 or 7 games this year, and he's been out ever since. If they had him here, I think they would be the best team in the Ivy League. But,
absolutely.
Harvard's in a position where, you have these 2 road games left, then you have Brown, and then you have Yale to finish the season. So the Ivy did a great job again. They knew their 2 best teams. They have them finishing to end the season Saturday, March the 7th. But some interesting things from Harvard. Harvard is only 2-8 against the Ivy League. They've won their games, but they have not extended margins. They're 0-9 when this line is in the 40. When the total's in the 140s, Harvard is 0-9 ATS this year. So, it's not like Columbia's gotten the money. Columbia is only 2-7 ATS at home. But Harvard's numbers are almost eye-opening that, to have a conference, to be 2-8 in conference and be a dominant foe, it just goes to show you that you're paying a premium when you're betting Harvard, and you're doing it again today with that line move.
I'm kind of surprised. It's funny because the total's right there at 140, Ralph, and I see 139 at circa. So it opened at 138, so the total moved up a little bit. We'll talk about it a little later during best bets, but I think there's some money to be made in the Ivy League tonight. Any trends and angles for us tonight, or do you want to just go right into our top matchups?
Oh, we always have some trends.
All right,
guys love them, and
I tee up with those every time. I'm gonna really enjoy teeing you up.
I always want to remind people, the trends and angles are there to just be part of your handicapping. They are not, you are not to base a play just on that trend. But hey, if you like a team, a trend is realizing how a team is playing. So if a team is 8-0 at home, is that important? Absolutely. They're playing well at home. If a team is 2-13 on the road, yes, they're playing poorly on the road. But you don't want to base the play just on those trends. Just make it part of your handicapping. But some of the top ones for today, you mentioned Harvard and that total's gone up. Harvard's 25-8 over under their last 33 on the road. So you have 76% of the time Harvard's on the road, they go over the total. Wright 2-13 over under their last 15 games. Washington, they're laying double digits today to their rival, only 3-13 their last 16 games. Princeton on a 9-1 run their last 10. Yale has gone over 9 of their last 10. And Jared, sometimes what we do on Friday is just run through a couple of the tops on Saturday.
Sure.
And let me just take a look ahead again. Gonzaga went over. Drew gave them out as a best bet in the first half yesterday. Let's remember they're now 20-3. Their last 23 games, they've gone over 23 times. Air Force is now 0-11 against the spread. Air Force has failed to cover 11 straight games. Toledo, 0-10 ATS at home, failed to cover 10 straight. Pittsburgh, 2-14 against the spread on the road. And Arkansas Musselman goes from Nevada to Arkansas, takes over, changes the pace. Arkansas now 11-1 over under their last 12 games.
Interesting. So Saturday, I'm looking at Saturday. There's a couple of interesting ones. And we don't have lines for these games yet, but there's certainly a lot of interesting games. Penn State at Iowa, Providence at Nova. So Saturday is going to be stacked, and every Saturday, I feel like now that's what I've noticed the last couple weeks, Ralph. Now that I'm watching college basketball exclusively on the weekends, the intensity level with the weekend games, especially the national TV games, these games in February, they feel like March games already.
Oh, they do. To me, Michigan State going, the Big Ten to me is intriguing. Michigan State going to Maryland. We'll see if Maryland get a whole serve. Penn State's proven they're a good team, but now they have to go to Iowa where they play at home. Yeah. And I think the world's going to be betting on Duke off another loss now. But they go to Virginia, so
Virginia's playing a lot better too. They're starting to peak at an interesting time, right? And they're the defending champs.
I wouldn't lay more than a couple, but I think Duke that price is going to go up. Here, I know this. If you want to play Duke off the loss like they were last time, and I was on them last time they were off the loss, they were laying 16.5. But being off a loss at Virginia is a different story. Bet it as soon as it comes out because that line's going to climb a few points.
Another one I see that I really like. In fact, I think if there's an angle in this game with Auburn at Kentucky, I think Kentucky's starting to round into form. Calipari has these kids playing like sophomores and juniors, and most of them are freshmen. So, and Auburn struggled on the road this year. They've dropped their last 2 road games at Missouri, at Georgia, and Rupp's no easy picnic. I can see Kentucky really running up the score against the Tigers tomorrow. That's another one of those CBS Saturday afternoon game. I mean, it feels like March now. I mean, and I know this weekend is technically March, but these games have been so intense the last month.
Yeah, and Drew talks about Auburn's home road dichotomy quite a bit. And, I'm just Auburn going back to last season. They're actually 5-16 against the spread their last 21 games. So, and you know what, Jared? We don't always talk a lot of Saturday here, but I want to shout out to our viewers. Sure. Make sure Teddy and I, the Wager Talk show on Sports Grid, we do it live coming up right after this show, 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern. And then it gets repeated Saturday morning. We're going to be talking about the draft, some props from the combine, college basketball on Saturday, and NBA over the weekend. So you want more weekend coverage, check us out on Sports Grid.
Yeah, lots of stuff at Sports Grid. I'm involved with them a lot. We do a great job with really weaving in every sport. We do basketball shows, we do hockey shows, we do everything. So it's certainly a good place to get some resources. All right, top matchups tonight. There's 2 really big games on the board. The first one featuring one of the top teams in the country right now, the Dayton Flyers. They're at home. They're taking on Davidson. Interesting Atlantic 10 matchup. The Atlantic 10 certainly has been competitive this year. This line opened, actually Davidson was an 11.5 point home or road dog, and this has gone down a little bit. We're seeing Davidson now getting about 10.5 points in the marketplace. Interesting stuff there. Are you fading the Flyers at all down the stretch, Ralph? What's your thought on these big spreads with Dayton?
I think it depends on the team, and I think Dayton's a team that, do you want to win? Absolutely. Do you care if you cover? It doesn't mean one thing.
Yeah, I agree.
You're sitting at 26-2. You're 3 games clear of Rhode Island. So, at this point you can't lose. Well, if you lose all 3, you could tie Rhode Island, but they have Rhode Island on deck. So if they win
control
today,
their own destiny.
They're going to clinch it, but I think they want to take care of Rhode Island as well. I look at it, and Dayton is clearly the better team, but down the stretch, Dayton is 2-7 against the spread their last 9 games. Again, we know they have a winning streak, but, they went to Davidson. They only won by 1 when they played them last year. This is one of the teams they only play once this year, so there isn't a revenge factor here. And Davidson traditionally plays them close. It's a game where I am not interested in laying the number with Dayton because this isn't their home finale. They have Rhode Island on deck, and a win is a win for them, and that's all they're looking for at this point.
Yeah, Jalen Crutcher. We all know about Obi Toppin, but Jalen Crutcher has been so good. And, he's kind of the straw in the backcourt there that stirs that drink for Dayton. And you've got to give credit to Anthony Grant's done a great job this year. Dayton's going to be a real fun team to watch in the tournament. A big matchup in the Horizon League. The best two teams in the Horizon League. Wright State at Northern Kentucky. This line opened Northern Kentucky -3.5 as a home favorite, and it's pretty much stayed right there. One of my favorite nicknames in college basketball, Ralph, the Norse. Your thoughts on the Norse tonight as they host Wright State?
Well, I followed the Norse closely, when I was in Cleveland and, in the Horizon League, when they came into the Horizon League. When college basketball is winding down, Jared, when this is the final regular season game for both teams.
Exactly.
And, let's give the Horizon credit. They did the right thing. They took the two teams that they thought were the best two teams. They have them playing in the final game. This is for the Horizon League title. Wright State comes in at 14-3. Northern Kentucky comes in 13-4. They share the title if Northern Kentucky wins. Wright State wins it outright if they win. So you can't get a better game for all the marbles. And because there is that intensity, even though Wright State has been an over team on the road, I think this is going to be like a heavyweight fight.
Yeah.
The total climbed. It opened, 142? We could have talked about this in Line Movers.
Yeah.
It climbed to 147. That's a 5-point move from the opener.
Wow.
And it's a 5-point move that I don't agree with. Yes, I understand Wright State is the fastest or second fastest tempo team in the Horizon. Yes, I understand that Wright State has gone over 68% of their time on the road, but Northern Kentucky is the number 9 tempo team out of the 10 teams. The home team often controls the tempo. And heavyweight battle, I would pick Wright State plus the points, not get into the window with it.
Yeah.
But my stronger opinion on the game would be the under between these two foes. Any thoughts from you, Jared?
Yeah, well, this was not a good result for Northern Kentucky when they went on the road to Wright State earlier this season. They gave up 95 points. They lost by 32. So the fact that Northern Kentucky is favored in this matchup leads me to believe that it will be the home team that controls tempo in this game. The totals for me, when I see a big move like that with a total, I feel like I missed the boat when it comes to, I'm kind of late to the party. So I usually tend to let those ride. If, a big move like that with a total. I actually do kind of like Northern Kentucky in this game at home. I don't know if I feel comfortable swallowing 3.5. If this gets down to maybe 3, 2.5, maybe it's a fun live bet. But I do think Northern Kentucky does win this game at home. If I had to get to the window with it, I would certainly get to the window with the Norse. As they look to make a play to win the Horizon League. All right, best bets time. I just need to state for the record, I've been on the show once. I'm 1-0 with a best bet, and they won by 30 last night. The Iona Gales came home for me, so I feel confident heading into this one. But, Ralph, I will let you have the tee box first.
I'm going to mention two things. When I did run the database, talking about the Northern Kentucky and Wright State game, just going back for 1 minute.
Sure.
When both teams have 20 or more wins in a season, like they do,
okay,
and the one team lost in the season and failed to cover by at least 15 points, so they got beat pretty handily.
Yeah.
They have covered 61% of the time in the meeting. So, like you said, you have a quality team who's won the conference multiple years, who has 21 wins at home. Again, Northern Kentucky is a solid team. Coming back with best bets, congrats. I was actually on Iona as well, so
nice.
I'll use the old staple, great minds think alike. And, I'm not using this game, but I did want to tweet it out, and I saw that you made a remark on it. At Cal Sports LV, go back and look at, there's a lot of angles and systems I tweet out. This is lost 20 straight Ivy League games on. So, and now they're an away favorite. I mean, that shows you what disrespect Cornell is getting. Cornell, though, is without their leading scorer. It's Jimmy Boeheim. Yes, that is the Syracuse's Suns head coach. He averages over 17 points per game. He's missed the last 2 games with an injury. He is questionable, so there's a chance he plays tonight. If you get information that Jimmy Boeheim is playing and Cornell is still a home dog or the game is pick 'em, I would absolutely fade Dartmouth on the road. So that's an if play, if you know Jimmy Boeheim's playing. Best bet tonight, there's very few teams playing as well as Texas State is down the stretch. And, it's a battle against Arlington, and Arlington is playing very well at home as well. But Arlington has had a brutal schedule. They just played, when they finished playing Texas State today, they're going to have played the top 4 teams in the Sun Belt back-to-back games. Now, they won the first 2. They lost to Georgia Southern at home last game. I think Texas State gets it done. The game's basically a pick-em, a 1-point line. But the Bobcats, to me, are the best team in the Sun Belt. Little Rock has a better record, but on paper, when I'm looking at Texas State, I do have them as my number 1 Sun Belt team and think they get the job done against Arlington tonight.
Yeah, I think the Sun Belt's an interesting league. Little Rock, and I would throw Georgia State a little bit into that mix as well. They have an interesting pedigree. I think the Sun Belt's a conference that maybe can steal a game early in the NCAA tournament if they get the right matchup. All right, I'm going back to the Ivy League. I really like this Harvard team tonight. I bet this earlier this morning, very early this morning when it opened at 7. I got it at 7.5. It's up to 9 now. I think it maybe can get to double digits as we get closer to game time. The Crimson are hot. They've won 3 in a row. They've won 5 of 6. We know Tommy Amaker. He's a proven winner. We know that they're without their best player, Bryce Aiken. He has a sprained foot. I don't think he's going to play tonight, but they're starting to learn how to win without him, which has kind of been impressive. This is a Harvard team that went on the road earlier this season and they beat Yale. And that's a big win because they are now in control of their own destiny to win the Ivy League. If Harvard wins out, they will be the Ivy champs. And the reason why that's important, the number 1 seed in the Ivy faces the 4 seed. And it's only a 4-team Ivy League tournament. And there's a big drop-off between Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, and then that 4th team, Brown. I think there's kind of a line there. And so to play the 4 seed is very important in that opening round game for the Ivy League. So I think it's important that Harvard closes the season strong. They need to win out their final 3 games in order to get that number 1 seed, and it starts tonight with Columbia. I'm going to say 7.5. If they win by 8 or 9, then we can have a arbitrage discussion later next week, Ralph. What do you think?
Well, it's a game where, you're talking about a team like Harvard who has had some slow starts, and they've talked about it. I talked about some of their ATS records not being great, but again, Columbia's aren't either. And,
no, Columbia's been really struggling.
To me, I don't, your best bet stands, but if I'm looking at Harvard in this game, I would actually look at the first half and lay the 4.5 because if Harvard gets up late, they may rest some guys. The Ivy's always a unique situation playing those Friday, Saturday games where, you're going on the road, you're playing Cornell tomorrow. Cornell, a better team than Columbia today, that, if you get up in that second half and you're playing 24 hours later, do you perhaps empty the bench a little bit? So a lot of times on those Friday games, do like looking at the first half teams when I have the superior team on the road. So this
is why we do this. And this is why I love doing this kind of stuff, because you just talked me into a new best bet. We're going to go Harvard on the first half now, and because I agree with that trend. That's not something that you always think about in college basketball, but it is something that you should start to think about soon, because these teams are going to start to play a lot of back-to-back games with the conference tournament. So keep that in mind as well, and that's a great point by Ralph. So we'll do Harvard minus 4.5 is the best bet in the first half. I already played Harvard minus 7.5 for the game. I'll probably play the first half as well. Good stuff on the Friday. Thanks for watching this edition of the Tip-Off Show powered by Wager Talk. Don't forget, follow him, Ralph Michaels, on Twitter at CowSportsLV. Follow me, Jared Smith, on Twitter at Jared Lee Smith. Visit WagerTalk.com. Visit SportsMemo.com. We've got all the picks this weekend and all the stuff, all the info, all the angles, all the edges that you need all in one place. Thanks again for joining us. Ralph, have a good weekend, man. Good luck.
Jared, awesome first 2 days. Glad you're on board. We'll talk to you Monday. Drew Martin will be back with us on Monday. Can't wait. See you guys in 71 hours.